بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Al-Sharif al-Murtada, who died in the year 436 after Hijrah, lists 7 characteristics for Imamah in his books Al-Shafi and Al-Dhakhira. The 6th characteristic that Al-Sharif al-Murtada lists for the Imam is he has to be the bravest. Bravery, shaja'a. An Imam must be brave. Even Al-Qadi Al-Iji, who was an 8th century Islamic century scholar from the Sunni school of thought, in his book Al-Mawaqif, he states that one of the conditions of Imamah is bravery, because according to Al-Qadi Al-Iji says the Imam has to defend the religion, and if he is weak, then the religion may be overcome. So one of the conditions that Al-Sharif Al-Murtada salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, in fact the 6th condition of Imamah that he lists is bravery. When it comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh, he was the bravest of all the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayh. In fact, after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayh, he was the bravest man present. In the battle of Badr, in the battle of Uhud, that famous saying, La fata illa Ali, wa la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. There is no strong believer like Ali, and there is no sword like Dhul Fiqar, with which Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was fighting with. And when his sword broke in Uhud, and he was given another sword, Jibreel alayhi salam came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi when all the Muslims left the Prophet and only Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam stayed next to him fighting with him, and told him, Ya Rasulullah, Ali is fighting to defend you. He is fighting fiercely for you. And the Prophet says, do you know why, Ya Jibreel? He says, why? He says, because I am of him and he is of me. And Jibreel said, and I am of you too as well. In Khandaq, the Prophet ﷺ says the strike of Ali on the day of Khandaq is equal to the worship of the jinn and the humans. In Khaybar, in Hunayn, it was Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi who was there, fighting always next to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And when he became the Khalifa in the battles of Al-Jamal, Siffin and Al-Nahrawan, that bravery continued. He wrote a letter to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. In it, he stated, the sword with which I have killed your brother, your uncle, and your grandfather is still in my hand, ready to fight you, unless you submit to the truth, the haqq. Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi was a brave man, and he has the famous saying, I swear by Allah, if all Arabs would turn to face me, I would not turn my back towards it and run away. He would fight. He would continue fighting it. And he said, 1,000 strike by sword is better than dying on bed. And this is demonstrated, my brothers and sisters, on the day of Ashura with Al-Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. Ibn Shahr Ashub says, of all the wounds of Imam Al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi on the day of Ashura, not a single one was found in his back. They were all in his front. Meaning, he never turned his back away from the army. He faced them all, even though there were about 30,000, give or take, at least of them, he never turned his back away from them. So bravery is essential. However, my dear brothers and sisters, this is bravery when it comes to war, and it is essential. There is another kind of bravery, which is the bravery for the steadfastness on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the path of haqq, not to deviate. What's right is right, and not to compromise. That requires steadfastness, bravery, no less. than the bravery in war, in combat. To be able to control oneself such that it becomes a complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One's life becomes a complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not any less bravery than fighting in wars. We find Imam Ali alayhi salam, when the three people who came before him as leaders, whenever they sought advice from him, he would go and give them sincere advice for the sake of Allah and for the prosperity of Islam. Even though those people have taken his haqq away from him, even though those people have deprived him of his rightful leadership, khilafah and haqq, even though those people were responsible for attacking his house and burning it, yet when it comes for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he stood there and he provided them with guidance in an eloquent manner and sincere manner, because he puts haqq over batil, right over wrong, the interest of Islam over his interest, what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over what pleases him. When it came to his time for khilafah, salamullahi alayh, people told him, why don't you leave Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan in power and give power to Talha and Zubayr? That would save a lot of bloodshed and wars until your power strengthens and your khilafah solidifies and gels, and then you can get rid of them all. He says, and then what will I answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment? When Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan oppresses someone, when Talha and Zubayr, who are not fit for leadership and governorship, oppress someone, what am I to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There is no compromise when it comes to religion. This is an important lesson we should learn from Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. Religion is first, the pleasure of Allah first. So we might struggle in this world a little bit. We might go through difficulties and hardships, but let us not lose focus of what is our goal in this life, and that is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a demonstration of bravery. As Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi one day was passing by a group of men who were carrying and lifting heavy rocks, and he asked them, what are you doing? They said, we are comparing which one of us is the bravest and the strongest, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Can you judge us, Ya Rasulullah? Look, I can lift a very heavy rock. Another person says, my rock is heavier than his. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, do you really want to know who is the bravest? Who is the strongest? They said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, who? He said, the man who can dedicate and make his decisions purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who puts preference of the pleasure of Allah over his own pleasure and his own interests. That's what we need to be motivated and driven for. Hence, bravery is the sixth condition according to Al-Sharif Al-Murtada for Imamah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.